right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I was being very extreme with those examples so that it's clear. I'm hoping most people are going to say number 2, not number 1.
Yeah, I went with number 2. I went with number 2, obviously. Hi, I'm Kyle Werkerly, certified professional ghostwriter. I'm glad you're listening as I welcome industry experts to share stories. You'll hear of lessons learned the hard way, overcoming professional hurdles, turning experience into actionable knowledge, and how to connect with your target audience. This is the Career Challenges Podcast. So welcome to the Career Challenges Podcast. My guest for this episode is Armando Cruz. Armando Cruz is a connoisseur of experiences, husband, father, adventurer, best-selling author, ultramarathoner, lifestyle physical therapist, and legacy coach. So Armando, thank you so much for being on the Career Challenges Podcast with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So you wrote a book. It came out in 2017, right?
Correct.
All right. And so what's the book about? I mean, what motivated you to write this book, and what was that process like?
Those are loaded questions.
Well, just reading your bio on Amazon and on the book, it sounded like there was just so much happening, and this book only touches just a little bit of all that. Like there's just so much experiences going on. So I'm just curious. Well, what was it? What was it?
This book was prompted. It was essentially created since I was a kid. And what I mean by that is this book, the content, the focus of it is purposely and powerfully creating your legacy. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I said it's been crafted since I was a kid is because ever since I was a kid, I realized that I wanted to be the kind of father that my father was with me. Mm-hmm. And he was genuinely my best friend. And I say that not as I was like the weird kid that nobody would talk to. In fact, I had plenty of friends.
Yeah, that would have been me. I would have been the weird kid.
Okay. Well, I had plenty of friends, but there was only one person that I truly confided in and trusted in, and that was in my father. And that's why I say he was my best friend, because I spent a lot of time with him. Mm-hmm. We trained together, we talked, conversation amongst conversation, but even more importantly was watching our conversations be manifest through his action, right? So whenever he would share insight, it wasn't coming from a pedestal of saying, hey, do this, even though I don't do it. It was like, no, look, let's take a look at this, why is this important to you? Okay, great. Let's set these things up in order to make this happen. Mm-hmm. But he would do it himself. I would see him wake up every morning at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, and go out and train. And then he'd come back after his training and knock on the door at 6 a.m, and he's like, hey, you want to go run? You want to go do this? And I'd be like, no, I want to be sleeping like everyone else is. Mm-hmm. And his persistence, he would knock every day until eventually one day I'd say, okay, fine, I'm already up. And then, one day it turns into 2 and 2 into 3. And now, I am in the same boat, right? I'm in the same boat. So that was the genesis of this idea and this fascination with legacy and fatherhood. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to perhaps 6 years back. So this is 2014.
Oh, 2020 to 2014. Yeah,
2014. I have a successful fitness and physical therapy studio in Miami, Florida with my wife. We have, by all, a nice house, a modest house, is, a single family home. We each have a car that works and takes us places. We can go on vacations. We have a good family structure, both internally, like our core family, plus our surrounding family. Our parents are all married, are still married, both of our parents, and our siblings are close, and we have a close family unit. So from the outside, everything looks perfect. But imagine creating your own prison. Mm-hmm. imagine working so hard for something and it becomes the one thing that you feel now shackled by. I don't know if you can relate or anyone listening relate that feeling of what you were striving for now becomes the thing that you feel is weighing you down. And worse, you don't know what to do. You now feel lost, you feel stuck. And that's what happened to me in 2014, to the point where I almost bankrupted the business. And this was at a time where my wife was pregnant with our third child. Mm-hmm. And I was in a really dark place, to the point where, like I said, I almost bankrupted the business. I was sleeping 4 to 6 hours in the middle of the day. I would leave work and I was like, I just don't want to work anymore. I don't want to see anyone. And I fell into this depressed state. I'm not going to say I was in a clinical depression, but I was definitely in a less than state of my normal being.
Yeah,
right?
Like you know for sure that you're not at your normal level of contentment, not necessarily happiness, but contentment, like you were saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So in going through that darkness, I was met with a level of courage from my wife that was truly inspiring. I was able to express to her that frustration, and she, was helping in the best way that she knew how. But I mean, she's pregnant. She can only do so much. I have to, at the end of the day, get up and do what I got to do. Mm-hmm. At the time, I had a coach that reached out to me, a friend of mine that was a coach, and he invited me to a retreat he was doing in Thailand, which is halfway across. Literally, it's 12-hour difference.
Really?
So it's halfway across the world from where we are. So I remember thinking there are two problems. First of all, I think that this can help, but I have two problems. Number one, I can't afford it because, like I said, I was bankrupting the business, not on purpose, just my actions were leading it in that way. Mm-hmm. Number two, during the time of the retreat, if my wife went into labor a little bit early than the due date, I would have missed the birth. So now I don't have money, and I may miss the birth of my third child, mm-hmm. both of which were not great. But I remember having the conversation with my wife, and she looked at me straight in the eye and asked me, do you think that this is a moment where, if you think that this experience is something that can get you to step out of this rut and I said, yeah, I truly believe that this is. And she goes, well, then you need to do this. You need to do this, not for you, but for us, so that you can be the husband, the man, the father I know that you can be, because I would rather you miss the birth of our child and miss that one day than be absent for the rest of our marriage because you're in this rut. And I was like, oof. To me, that was a level of courage that I had never really experienced, because you're literally talking. Here's a woman that is now going to be running the business, dealing with 2 other kids, mm-hmm. pregnant, and if something happens, I'm halfway across the world. It takes about 24 hours door to door mm-hmm. to get there. And she said, you know what? You need to go do that. And I went to Thailand, and I gained the level of clarity that I needed, which was, it helped me realize that I wanted to not only help people heal the way that both my wife and I do in our business, which we still have, but I wanted to help men just like myself, mm-hmm. who were family-centered married men that were entrepreneurs, that wanted to show up powerfully in their marriage, in their business, in their health, and create a purposeful legacy. And that was really the genesis of where that book really started taking shape, because when I got back, luckily 3 days later, the baby was born. So I didn't miss the birth of our child.
So the timing worked out, thank God.
The timing worked out. Yes. I forget to say that sometimes, and people are like, I start getting emails and texts like, well, you never said, did you miss the baby or not?
Yeah, because other dads are hung up on that. Like, did you miss that? Because that's something we don't want to miss, obviously. So we want to know that storyline got resolved.
Yes, that storyline did get resolved. Nobody has to, we can close that loop. You don't have to
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So I returned back from there. I'm there for the birth of my child. But from there, while I was in Thailand, I was able to create the program that I wish I had as a married man entrepreneur that focuses, that centers around the family first, and then the concentric circles roll out. Whereas many entrepreneurial approaches focus on the providing first, and if something's going to give is the relationship. Mm-hmm. And so this was an opportunity to flip that and create a process, a program, a way of being that can take you from that heart center family entrepreneurial approach and grow out from there. Mm-hmm. And after a few, so that was 2014. Mm-hmm. So 3 years later, after working with my clients, I realized more people need to hear this. And I say that because I understand that not everyone's ready for coaching, mm-hmm. both emotionally, physically, financially. They're not, there's a good majority of people that aren't. And one of the things I would share is that coaching is not a necessity. Coaching is a luxury, which seems like in today's day and age, everybody seems to be a coach and it's the most important thing. And it's true. It can really make a big impact in your life. But the reason I say it's a luxury is because we've gotten through society, we've gotten through our evolution from the beginning of time mm-hmm. without coaching.
True. Yeah.
So coaching is not a survival thing. Coaching is a thriving thing. Now, if we're having a conversation and you tell me, no, I'm looking to thrive. I'm looking to grow and expand and create massive impact. Okay, wait. Now there's a conversation. But if you're like, oh, I'm just waiting to pay the bare minimum of my bills and I'm just kind of content with where I'm at. Awesome. Mm-hmm. No judgment. But coaching may not be, it's not going to be a good fit for you at that moment. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because with the, like you were saying, that coaching is a luxury. A lot of people feel they have to get a coach just to get to the next level. And then that may not necessarily be true because they're thinking, I just need this, I need X to get to Y, when really it's about, well, who can help me get to where I want to go? And that's the mindset that works better, for finding a coach that can really help you instead of just going out and getting a coach, checking that off my list of things I have to do. So, it makes sense. And you had mentioned, legacy, why, not necessarily that word. I mean, obviously I know why you picked that word, but when you talk about legacy for men and their family, are you talking about in their family, like, for your children's children and their children and on and on and on, or legacy in the broader sense of, you're going to, what you do today will affect people down the road that you probably will never meet or who may never even know your name?
Right. Yes and yes. So in the book, one of the things that I define is there are two types of legacy. Mm-hmm. There is the personal legacy and the impact legacy. And most of us know guys like, let's say, Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. And we can say he left an impact legacy. Like, the name, you are probably using one of his products in some way, shape, or form, or know somebody who does, or have been affected by that whole thing. Our whole market system has been affected by the way he disrupted that whole industry, by the way he marketed and, the elegance of his products. Great. Mm-hmm. But his personal life, not great.
No.
Not great. The way he treated people, again, based off what I've read and people's accounts. I never met the guy, so I'm just saying, based off what my understanding of people, what people have expressed, it wasn't great. It was great. He didn't treat people great. And my experience is our first responsibility as men, as fathers, is, by the way, this works for mothers too, or women as well. But in this particular case, I'm specifically talking to men, is to provide and to protect for your family, for your core nucleus. the people that matter most. If you neglect them, but go out and seek everyone else, well, you've left the number one responsibility of, like, when you got married, when you created your own family, you've just abandoned it, which is to support, to create a humans for the future that are actually going to be citizens that are actually going to be add value to this world, not be sucking value drive from this world, right? They're going to add to it. And so the personal legacy is, how do you affect the people that are closest to you, family, closest friends? Start there and then work the concentric circles out. Then how do you affect the community? How do you affect and keep expanding it there? It doesn't have to be either or, but if I had to choose, in my experiences, I think you've left a big part, and perhaps I would even go on record saying is you failed if you failed your family. Mm-hmm. If you helped hundreds of people, their families are grateful, and I'm not taking anything away, but your primary responsibility, you have failed because you didn't take care of your family. And so that's the difference between the personal and the impact legacy.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're coaching clients and they come to you, or like another dad, for example, is there that weight that they talk about? Like, because when I don't feel it now, but when my children were younger, even though they're 4 and 2 right now, but when they were younger, I just felt this weight of, I've got to provide for them. It's on me. And there's all this research, because I have daughters, and there's all this research about how women, if they don't have a positive male role model, statistically, they're going to have, a more challenging life, more instances of all these other bad things that they're mentioning. And so I felt, well, it's on me. If I screw up, I screwed them up. And so has anyone come to you and been like, I feel that weight and that pressure, how can I create that legacy when I feel like I can't even, be a good dad? How do you answer that?
They're the same answer in reality, because when you show up as the best self that you can be, the other stuff it's part of the same ripple, right? You're still dropping the same stone. The rest is going to be impacted the same in a similar way. So the question is how do you create the impact from the inside out? Well, let's just say you throw the biggest stone, if we're going to talk about that, the better suited you are. And by the way, you're not only dealt one stone, right? We have different stages in our life. If you're a college student, there's a good chance you're going to be acting and thinking very different than if you're a married man with kids. Let's just say, I hope those guys are thinking different. They're in different stages of their life. When I wrote the book, I interviewed 153 men. What I found was fathers of all the people that I interviewed, fathers had the greatest, what's the word I'm looking for? They thought about legacy more than any other group of men that I talked about. Second were people who were religious, that they believed in God, something greater than themselves. So now they were thinking of something greater, and within that realm fell legacy. The ones that thought least about it were guys that were in college. In comparison, it wasn't in the forefront. It didn't really affect their actions at the moment, based off what they told me. But I did 153 interviews. It could have been the people that I did. It could sway, but I kind of feel like the second you have kids, stuff shifts, because now you have a dependent that you created. That's a very different experience than, hey, I have responsibilities because, I got out of school, or that's a different thing. A different thing. When you get married, same thing. It's a different stage of your life. And so if you're living it the same way as if you're single, I hate to break the news, it ain't going to work for very long. Because you living like if you're single when you're married, it doesn't mesh well.
Yeah. It's not going to translate, I guess is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk about, legacy and having that, broader mindset and that broader vision, how can someone approach that? Like, say you're talking to a young man who's kind of wanting to get that mindset now. He may not necessarily be married or have
Right.
children, but he kind of wants to start thinking that way, not necessarily to get ahead of the curve. It's not like a game to him, but he wants to have that because he knows of the positive impact he can have on other people.
Right. I think the first thing is awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the book, I break it down into five components. And the first one is awareness, awareness of legacy, awareness of, that I want something greater, that I want to create that ripple of something greater than just myself.
Mm-hmm.
Everything isn't about me.
True.
Right. The second you can turn that, that's a big shift in your life.
Mm-hmm.
If your life is only about you and everything that makes you happy, and you really don't think about anyone else, you're in a completely different stage. At that moment, you will probably not really be thinking about legacy much. Mm-hmm. Because if everything is about you, then it doesn't matter what comes after, because you're not there. Mm-hmm. So awareness that you want something greater, that there is something greater. Mm-hmm. Second one is vision, right? You have to get clear on what it is that you want and be okay with not being perfect. I think this is one of the things that especially young people get wrong, or they haven't been encouraged enough. Nothing is set in stone. Mm-hmm. Or rarely are things set in stone. Let me say that, because I'm sure there's going to be. Rarely are
there's
things
exceptions to every rule. You're right. Yeah.
Right. But there's really nothing that says you can't make a shift in your life mm-hmm. at any point. And if something is not working, you can shift it. So you may say, well, I have this vision, but I don't know if it really is the final vision. Great. It gives you direction. Mm-hmm. That vision gives you a level of clarity. Okay, look, you know what? That's a mountaintop I'm willing to climb. You know what happens when you get to the mountaintop? You have a brand new perspective because you just gained altitude. And all of a sudden you can see things you never saw before. But the quest to get there is going to make you a different person. Is going to help you grow into the person that can get to the top of that mountain, right? Mm-hmm. So the first one is vision. Get clarity on that vision. The second step is get clarity on that vision. Third mm-hmm. step is what's that purpose or the engine that's going to move you? Because any journey that you take will have obstacles, will have challenges, will have setbacks. And most people plan and are inspired by the good stuff, but they fail to plan for what's going to happen when, not if, when I hit the roadblocks, when I have to overcome these obstacles, when I don't feel like doing it, when I dislike doing it, what then? And so if you don't have something driving you that's greater than yourself, something that's more meaningful than the present moment, then you're probably going to get stopped when those obstacles come. So having a purposeful, a powerful purpose is really important. So that was number 3.
Yeah,
number 4 is process. So now we have the vision, the destination. We have the engine that we know that can take us there. Now we have to create a plan. We have to it's a choose your journey, choose your adventure right now. Mm-hmm. And not all adventures are created equal. Because if I told you, you know what, at the end of a year, I can guarantee you're going to have $1 million. The question is you can take option 1. Option 1 is you're going to make $1 million, but we're going to exploit women and children. Option 2, you're going to make $1 million, but you're going to help women and children. You're going to end up with $1 million, but they're very different paths. They feel different, impact on this world.
Definitely.
Right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I was being very extreme with those examples so that it's clear. I'm hoping most people are going to say number 2, not number 1.
I went with number 2. I went with number 2, obviously.
And then, the final stage 5 is implementation, right? Mm-hmm. Because until we take that first step, physically, the journey hasn't officially begun,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we got to start taking the steps, and we have to start getting that feeling of discomfort, because when there is an unknown, there's discomfort.
Would you like to be a guest on the Career Challenges podcast? Go to careerchallengespodcast.com to find out how. While you're there, check out other episodes and download them through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. The Career Challenges podcast is hosted by me, Kyle Weckerly. I'm a certified professional ghostwriter who works with business thought leaders and industry experts to write polished manuscripts, assess their publishing options, and create book marketing plans. I've worked with consultants, high-ticket salespeople, coaches, speakers, C-level executives, and business owners. My authors have worked for USAA, Vistage, Booz Allen Hamilton, Austin Technology Council, and the John Maxwell team. My authors want to write a book to serve as a platform for their marketing endeavors. They know that becoming an author will help them secure speaking gigs, market their expertise, promote a product or service, and more. Are you ready to turn your experience, knowledge, and stories into actionable advice and connect with your ideal client? Then visit WeckerlyWriter.com to schedule a consultation today and begin your publishing journey. That's WeckerlyWriter.com. WeckerlyWriter.com. And now, back to the Career Challenges podcast. So with your, with helping people to, or helping men specifically, and you say also women can do it as well, to create a legacy, and one of the steps was purpose, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was step 4. Was that right?
Step 3.
Step 3 was purpose, and then planning it and being prepared for roadblocks. How are you able to, I guess, teach perseverance? Because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, it's an ultra marathon, and pardon the pun, I know you're an ultra marathoner there. But I mean, how can you start to teach that? Because that's something that I struggle with even now. And I have 2 children. I've been working as a ghostwriter for a while, and I still catch myself thinking, why is this not moving faster? So that's something I still struggle with. So I'm curious, how are you able to kind of teach that mindset? Because legacy obviously means it's going to be around for a while, and to build it, it's going to take some time. So how can you get that perseverance or that long-term mindset so that when the roadblocks do come, you're not, impatient?
Right. Okay. So there's quite a lot to unpack there. I want to rewind for a second. No matter what happens, you're going to have a legacy. Mm-hmm. The question is, are you choosing it intentionally, or are you just kind of letting it happen? Because at the end of the day, yes, there's going to be a ripple effect of the fact that you were living on this world. Some people, it doesn't last much longer than that, because they didn't create any value for other people. It was all about them. And so it stops right there.
Yeah.
Other people, you can see it. A perfect example, Mother Teresa, right? How many lives does she touch?
Yeah.
Right. And in such a simple way that people, regardless of their religion or not, have heard of her and can see compassion. It doesn't have to do with the religion. It doesn't have to do with anything. It's like, no, this was a human being. This was a human manifesting love to other humans in the simplest, most beautiful way, right? Mm-hmm. Sure. And what a legacy, right? So the life that you live is the legacy that you leave behind, right? So the life, so how you're choosing to live is going to create the legacy that you leave behind.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way of saying
that. To your question, how do you prepare for that? You said something right now that I kind of want, if you don't mind, I'd like to use that as the example, which was that you've been ghostwriting for a while, and sometimes you feel like certain things are not moving fast enough.
Yes.
That is one of the elements of what I call threat. Mm-hmm. Threat, stress, feeling overwhelmed, feeling, like you've hit those roadblocks. It happens with 3 main things. things are moving too slow, like you're saying, hey, I want to see the results a little quicker. Why is this taking so long?
Mm-hmm.
Things are moving too fast. Holy cow, there's way too many things coming my way. I don't know if I can handle this. You're overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
You get stressed out. Your body kind of is like fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Third one, unclear intent. Now you're not clear why you're taking these steps. Now you're not clear what even steps to take. So when you find yourself not able to do this, ask yourself, okay, wait, this isn't something mythical. This isn't something that you have to be filled with the gods of inspiration and you're going to overcome, because it gets explained like that. The people that understand it, they feel like, no, is that you got to find your purpose and it's going to magically transform you. Yeah. Well, sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you got to fight through it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to try the things that are the anti of it, the things that are not it, to let you know more what it is that purpose is. Well, we know that this is not my purpose. What else have I tried? Oh, this is not my purpose. This is not the thing that's going to drive me. Great. So when you're having trouble finding what it is, ask yourself what it is not. And that'll help give a little bit more direction, give a little bit more clarity, until eventually you can figure it out. Mm. I share the story of growing up. My father, my parents had me doing certain chores in the house. And one of them was taking out the trash. Well, I didn't like taking out the trash. And I realized early on that growing up, I did not want to be a trash man. I didn't want to be around it. I didn't want to do that. The other thing that I had to do was cut the grass. I had to mow the lawn. I quickly realized I don't want to mow lawns for a living. Nothing wrong with it. It wasn't for me. Did I learn some skills? Yeah. I learned a work ethic. I learned some skills that I've taken with me. But that's not why I was put here. Mm-hmm. Later on, my father has had his own company, his own construction company. So in Miami, Florida, in the summer, when I was out of school, I would go to work with my dad. Mm-hmm. And that meant 90 plus degrees with 90% humidity, with mosquitoes and sun beaming down, and manual labor where you're digging trenches, carrying cinder blocks, sweeping up, cleaning up, hard manual labor in the most unappealing way. And I quickly realized I don't want to do that when I grow up. So there were already 3 things that I already chipped away. But I can start connecting the dots, other things similar to that. They're like, no, I don't want to go down that path. What I did know is I was very passionate about sports. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a better athlete, but I was never the best athlete. I was very athletic, that you can put me anywhere, anytime, and I would create value for the team. But I was never that superstar that everyone was going to depend on the buzzer beating shot. That wasn't me. Mm-hmm. And so I spent all of middle school, high school, and college figuring out ways, doing things that other people weren't doing, so that I can keep up with those stars, so that I can play at their level to the best of my ability. And within that came a love affair, and started realizing, let me understand performance more. So I studied that. Then I was like, wait, part of performance is nutrition. I studied that. And then I was like, wait, people get hurt. I should probably know how to not get hurt, and know how to heal myself and others. If in the future I decide to do that, how to get hurt, how not to get hurt. And then I realized, wait, none of this matters if the stuff between your ears is not in the right place. So how do we create a better brain set so that your mindset is in a more powerful position? Mm. And so that's just like a quick example of using the anti thing to help direct you towards the thing that really is a driving purpose.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to explain that and how to approach that. For finding, of course, what you want to do, and I've heard that before too, and a lot of people, I think it's a counterintuitive approach to them, because I've been asked, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I don't know, and they're like, well, what do you don't want to do? I'm like, well, that's obvious, and so everyone knows what they don't want to do, and so it's easy to state that, quantify it, and that way it's a starting point to find what you do want to do. And I thought that's always a great idea.
And if I may take that another step further, because that's still quite surface, right? What don't you want to do? Okay, great. What about that makes you say you don't want to do that? Okay, well, I don't like this component. Well, is there a component that you do like? Oh, now we start putting a list of components that you like. And then you can Frankenstein your own thing, because there was nothing in college. There was no direct path in college when I was in the university to do what I do now. I Frankensteined it based off what I wanted to learn, create, and be able to help people with. So sometimes if you're a doctor, well, there's a set path. But when you get out, you can create even more of a different path. An attorney, yeah, there's something else. But if you don't want to be like an attorney, an engineer, a doctor, even a teacher at a school that tend to have like, okay, you have to do this, then you do this, then you do this, and that's it. Like that's your path. Then you're free to create it however you like.
Awesome. And so you mentioned your dad was training as well when you were younger, and that you picked up on that and you started doing that kind of training. Was he an ultramarathoner, or was he training for a different sport?
Yes. So my dad was, I would say, a runner, and he did marathons and so forth. And he was a competitive runner. He did well locally, not on a national stage. He also did some Ironmans.
Wow.
So I grew up watching this, and like I said, I ran in high school and in college, but in high school, he would come out and he would run with us, and he would beat us. So it wasn't like, oh, there's my dad who's just trotting along. It's like, no, you can try to keep up with him, but you're not going to keep up with him.
Did that motivate you?
Yeah. It's funny. So I'm the oldest of four. We have, my parents had 2 boys and 2 girls. So the girls are in the middle and the boys are the bookends.
Okay, cool.
My sisters didn't love my parents all the time there. I loved having my dad there because, like I said, he was my best friend and I respected him. I didn't mind having him with my friends because I knew that he can kick their butt. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he had done the work, and I was like, no, I don't want to be like them, like my friends. I want to be like my dad because my dad is better than them. Right? So definitely. I had it right in front of me to go after that. And a lot of the same habits that he has, I've adopted, except he adopted these through experimentation, but not necessarily always knowing what really the best thing was. Because I'm in the field, now I understand the health components where some of the stuff is too much, and how do you tweak it so that it actually becomes something that elevates you and enhances, not breaks you down.
Definitely. And so I don't want to mention that I've run only half marathons, because here you are, ultra marathoner. I'm a half marathoner. Anyway, but when it comes to running an ultra marathon, how do you train for that? Because I just do a lot of running, honestly. I don't do any like hill repeats or any sort of special drills or anything. For me, it's just straight running. What is your approach to ultra marathoning?
So at its core is running. So yes, right. But what's funny is I ran my first let me rephrase that. I ran my first 100 miler last November.
Wow.
So it's been a year. not last November, the November before.
Okay.
So yeah, not last year, the year before, in 2018.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm actually training for my second 100-miler in April now. It's coming up in April at the end of April.
Wow.
But what people don't realize, because they see that and they're like, oh, it's 100 miles, so crazy. Wow. Like, why would you do that? You know, but what they don't see is that 3 years before that, I had been very inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with a simple habit of moving 10 minutes every day, not running, moving. That included walking, yoga, stretching, exercise. It included running. Any one of those for a minimum of 10 minutes worked. And I did that without missing a day for, it was 3 years before I started now adding running every day as a separate thing. So now I have 10 minutes of exercise, movement, that stuff. And then I also had a minimum of 30 minutes. And I did that for 400 days before without missing a day. I started building up 30 minutes every single day without missing a day for 400 days straight, a minimum.
Wow.
And leading up to the ultra marathon, I built up to the point where I was doing 2 hours a day. And I was doing some other stuff. I was running up and down on the hills because I was going to be running in the mountains. And I live in flatland, so I did a lot of bridge repeats. I dragged a lot of tires for miles and miles and miles. So I had to get creative with it. But the way you train for it is create the space, just like anything, and create the consistency. I'm more about consistency than any one workout. No one workout is going to make you better. Sure. It's the consistent workouts over time that make you better. And so for me, I have this streak right now. Right now I'm since the last 100-miler, I took 4 days off. It was the first time in I don't know how many years that I didn't do anything for 4 days. Partly because I wanted a mental and physical reset. And so after those 4 days, I haven't missed a day of running. I'm at 465 days today.
Wow.
Right.
Awesome.
And so to answer your question, that's kind of how I train. I think more of the consistency. I try to use other things, like instead of being in a hurry to sit down, I look at it as an opportunity. Oh, I get to stand longer. Great. I'm training for the ultra marathon because I'm more time on my feet. So mentally, I start playing games. Oh, we're going to do something. I'll play games with the kids. And we'll be like, oh, let's play dice with the kids. And we'll have an exercise and we'll throw the dice. And it's like, oh, okay, great. Landed on, it was 8. Okay, we're going to do 8 jumping jacks. Great. So we do this for time. And we have a good time. We throw in some exercise in there. We have a good time. And it's just stuff that we add on without it being overwhelming.
Awesome. That's a great approach. So I have to ask, because I feel I need to listen to music, but recently I've done some runs without it. But I mean, do you listen to music for a run? And if so, what kind of music do you like to listen to?
The answer is no. I don't listen to music. Running is really my time to clear out my head. It's my time to think. It's my time to just kind of experience nature. There are times when I don't feel like running, which is why I do this, that I'll listen to a podcast. So it's kind of like a run, but to spike the run I don't really want to do. I just do it because it's part of the consistency. It just entertains me enough. But music, I find it doesn't make me grow. And it ends up being noise in my head when I need to get all the other stuff in my head. There's a personal preference. I've grown to really enjoy music now. I didn't really love music growing up. So there's a power and there's a space in my life for music and inspiration. It's just not while I'm running.
I see. Yeah. For me, it's the opposite. I really enjoy that time running to just let my mind wander, or to focus on something that I'm trying to figure out. I use it also for prayer and meditation. I see it as time set aside for that, which is great. So yeah, and I love running. And of course, my wife, I always have to point this out, my wife is always faster than me. She's finished every half marathon in better time. And every time we go for a run together, she always takes off. It's like in the first quarter mile, I'll see her, and after that, she's gone.
She's gone, huh?
Yeah, she's gone. She's also got the runner's body and the runner's legs for it. It's a gene from her side of the family that is really working out. So hopefully my daughters get that as well. But you also hinted that you're going to be writing a second book. Are you working on that now, or is it going to start soon?
The writing has not begun. The research and crafting and brainstorming has begun already for a few years. I've been like, I come up with something that I'm like, ooh, yep, that's got to be in there. And I have, I use Evernote for a lot of my writing and my thinking and so forth. So I'll just put it there under book idea, and I added to the list. And so I have all these quotes. I have all these things. I have an idea of well, I know what it's going to be about. I don't yet know how I want to present it. I mean, in essence, it's what we were just talking about. It's how do you create micro habits? So micro habits that have minimal resistance to create maximal transformation over time.
Yeah, definitely. I see where you're coming with that. So do you have a proposed debut date for the book, or is it that's still up in the air? Because I want to read it too.
Yeah, I don't have the date. I would like to. I have a few projects that I'm kind of still going, which is why, like, for me, the start date to write it is August. So I've mentally put it out as far as the writing, because if not, then it's just weighing me down. So I said, look, I'm not going to touch it until August. I still, whenever I get an idea, like today, I had an idea and I put it on there. And so I typed it in so that when I go to it in August and I start looking at it, okay, how do I start organizing this? How do I want to approach this? I have some of the raw ingredients in there that I want to go. I mean, I have an idea of what I want to be writing, but the writing isn't going to start until August. When I wrote my first book, I was blessed with ignorance on what it would take. I think if I had known how difficult it was going to be, I would not have started it. I would have wanted to write it, but I don't know if I would have started it. To give you the idea of, or the level of ignorance that I had. So the book came out 2017. Officially came out 2017, which means 2016 was the pre-launch date. I launched it 1 week before Christmas. The December before, so December of 2015, I said, oh, I think I want to write a book. I was already going to be doing a virtual, it was called the Modern Man Virtual Summit. So it was a virtual summit, so not in anywhere particular. I interviewed a whole bunch of men in different arenas. That was going to happen in March. And my thought process was, not only was I going to create this virtual summit for the first time, I'd never done it. And I thought, I get that. I might as well add a book. I thought I was going to have the book written, proofread, and printed by March. So in less than 3 months, in my head, I would have going to do everything. 12 drafts later, I finished the book, ready to be sent out and published. And it was sent out. It was put up to be sold on 2016, December 2016. What is it? 7 days, so the 18th of December. And on the 19th, it became a bestseller.
Wow.
before it even came out, like a pre-release.
Okay, cool.
And then it officially came out, I think it was like January 17th or something like that. So all the people that bought it in December didn't get it until January.
Okay, cool. Wow, that's impressive. But yeah, you're very upfront and honest about the ignorance part. That was funny. So then, do you feel more prepared now for that writing process for the second book?
Yes, very similar to this ultra marathon this 100-miler I'm going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Having experienced the pain that I had in the first ultra marathon, I'm like, I got this. In fact, when I finished the ultra marathon, the first 100-miler, there were two thoughts that crossed my mind. Number one, I can do this faster, and number two, I can do 200 miles. Those were the two thoughts that came out immediately after. I feel very similar after I wrote this book.
Mm-hmm.
I've suffered and grown as a result of through the struggle of writing this book and really understanding what goes into it, to the point that I feel like, no, I am now a man that does that. Mm-hmm. Like, I've built up the muscles and the chops to do that. So not to say that it's easy. It's that I feel confident that I know what I'm getting myself into.
Mm. Cool. So besides the book, do you have another virtual summit coming up, or what else is coming up for you, Armando?
No virtual summits. The book is one. The ultramarathon is the other one. Mm-hmm. As far as events, I'm not putting, apart from my personal retreats that I put on with my clients, the Rich Man Experience for entrepreneurial married men. Mm-hmm. And then I have another one it's called the Fire Adventure, where I take men on a primitive overnight camp out, where I teach, where we learn lessons of growth by teaching them how to actually build a fire. So we relate the process of building a fire, primitive fire, to different components in their life, and how to use the principles of making a fire as a guiding, as a process for approaching the next achievement or goal, or the way they want to think about this next chapter in their life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, that's amazing. And if I may, can I put a link to your book in the show notes for anyone who's listening? Course. Awesome. Of course. That way they'll know where to go to get it, because I'm sure it's a great book. It's on my reading list. I will be reading this soon. But if they're interested in if you have another virtual summit coming out, or the fire experiences of the Rich Man experiences, how can they get in touch with you? How can they talk to you?
Sure. My name, ArmandoCruz.com, is one. The other one, the actual site for the book is LegacyCodeBook.com. Those are like the two. Obviously, I'm on social media, Facebook, The Armando, and then LinkedIn. I don't know what it is. And Twitter,
I think it's just Armando
Instagram.
Cruz.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I think so.
It could be.
Yeah, because I think that's where we originally connected with LinkedIn. So
Right.
Awesome. Well, Armando Cruz, thank you so much for being on the Career Challenges podcast with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy and a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to the Career Challenges podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Career Challenges podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Visit careerchallengespodcast.com for more information. Schedule your free consultation with Kyle Weckerly by visiting weckerlywriter.com today. That's WECKERLYWRITER.com. Thank you.